All right, today we're going to go on a pretty incredible journey deep inside one of the most sophisticated filtration systems on the entire planet. We're going to shrink ourselves down from the size of a human fist all the way to the level of a single molecule just to understand how the kidney does its absolutely vital work.
So here's the plan for our expedition. First, we'll start with a big picture view of the kidney. Then, we'll peel back its layers to journey right into the center. From there, we'll meet the microscopic workhorses that do all the heavy lifting, we'll get a peek inside their filtration engines, and finally, we'll discover the ultimate molecular gatekeeper that makes the whole thing possible.
Okay, so our journey begins with the kidney as a whole organ. To really appreciate its inner workings, we first need to get a handle on its place in our bodies.
And here it is, the adult kidney. It only weighs about 150 grams, and you can see that classic bean shape. Now, this central dip here, that's called the hilum. And you can think of it like a really busy port. The renal artery pumps in blood that needs to be cleaned, while the ureter drains all the resulting waste away as urine.
So that's the million-dollar question, right? How in the world does this pretty small organ handle such a massive, monumental task? Well, the answer lies hidden within its incredibly complex internal architecture.
So now, let's actually journey inside. Imagine we're slicing the kidney right open. What we'd see is that the functional tissue, what's known as the renal parenchyma, is organized into these really distinct layers.
And right away, we can see two totally different zones. You've got the outer, kind of lighter colored layer, that's the cortex. And then the inner, darker region is the medulla, which is organized into these cool, cone-shaped structures called the pyramids of Malpighi.
And this division isn't just for looks, it's all about function. The cortex is where the blood filtration kicks off. The fluid that comes out of that process then travels down into the medulla, where it gets processed and concentrated into urine.
Okay, now we need to zoom in. I mean, way, way further. We're leaving the world we can see with our eyes behind to find the true engine of the kidney, and it's all happening at the microscopic level.
So get this. Packed inside each one of your kidneys is, on average, 1.6 million of these little engines. It's just a staggering number, and that is the secret to the kidney's immense filtering power.
And this right here, this is the nephron. It is the fundamental functional unit of the kidney. Literally, every single drop of urine your body produces is formed by one of these tiny, intricate little structures.
And the nephron structure? It's perfectly designed for its job. You see the filtering part, the Malpighian corpuscle? It sits up in the cortex. From there, its long, winding tube, which includes the famous loop of Henle, dips way down into the medulla before looping back up. And this specific layout is absolutely essential because it creates a salt gradient that's crucial for concentrating urine and saving water.
Okay, let's shrink down again, and this time we're going to focus on the very, very beginning of the nephron. We're heading to the exact spot where waste first gets pulled out of the blood.
This is the Malpighian corpuscle. So blood rushes in through this wide pipeline, the afferent arteriole, into this tangled knot of capillaries called the glomerulus. And because it has to exit through a much narrower pipe on the other side, pressure builds way up, forcing plasma right out of the blood.
So all that fluid that gets squeezed out, that's what we call the filtrate. It gets collected in this surrounding structure called Bowman's capsule, and from here, it starts its long journey down the renal tubule to get processed into what will eventually become urine.
All right, for our final step, we're taking the most dramatic leap in scale yet. We are going to zoom in on the wall of a single, tiny capillary inside the glomerulus to see the ultramicroscopic barrier that makes this entire process even possible. This is such an incredible structure. These specialized cells, called podocytes, they don't just form a flat layer. No, instead, they wrap themselves all around the capillaries, extending these primary and secondary arms, almost like the tentacles of an octopus, creating this delicate web-like covering.
And when you see it for real, under a scanning electron microscope, wow, the reality is even more stunning. The podocytes send out thousands of these tiny little foot processes that interlock with the ones from the cells next to them, leaving only these incredibly narrow gaps in between.
So the filtration barrier is actually made of 3 distinct layers. First, the plasma has to get through pores in the capillary wall itself. Then, it goes through a continuous layer called the basement membrane. And finally, it has to squeeze through those teeny tiny filtration slits that are formed by the podocyte feet.
These incredibly narrow gaps in between.
So the filtration barrier is actually made of 3 distinct layers. First, the plasma has to get through pores in the capillary wall itself. Then, it goes through a continuous layer called the basement membrane. And finally, it has to squeeze through those teeny tiny filtration slits that are formed by the podocyte feet.
And this is the ultimate gatekeeper. Water and small stuff like salt and urea, they're allowed to pass through all 3 layers. But the barrier is incredibly selective. It physically blocks large things like red blood cells and vital proteins, keeping them safely in your bloodstream, right where they belong.
And that really brings us to our final crucial point. From the whole organ all the way down to this intricate molecular sieve, we've seen just how perfectly the kidney is built for its job. I mean, this delicate barrier is all that stands between